Hey folks, welcome to Luneth Gardens. I'm your host Kenneth, and this is a quick tour of my backyard garden here near Tucson, Arizona. First off, you can see it's quite a mess there around the compost, etc., and some barrels back there but we have a Meyer lemon tree here, and it's doing okay. It was actually in a pot earlier this year, and I put it in this particular spot because the previous tree wasn't growing so well. Chimenea unfinished still. Over to the Valencia Orange tree, which it's finally starting to get big and produce, but it's not producing. Hasn't done so in about 4 years since I put it in. Over here we got a couple of pots that had peppers in them, but they didn't do quite so well. Thinking this container gardening thing might not be such a good idea in this Arizona heat. And back here we've got a Lisbon lemon tree. It's also the same age as that Valencia Orange. It's doing quite well. I've got some good bit of amount of fruit off it last year, and looking forward to pruning it back a little bit here in the fall and watching it explode again next year. Now we're going to move on to some pepper plants here. These are all going to be hot pepper plants. Haven't produced a whole lot. I've gotten a few things off them, but not much so far. They're still growing. Hopefully in the fall here we will get or not fall, but later in the summer here we'll get a better harvest. And some of the stuff is struggling there a little bit, but you know, it's hot. It got up to 112 yesterday. Some tomato plants here in containers also. They're still alive, but they are struggling, not doing quite so well. Might have to rethink this thing, maybe perhaps put a actual bed in this area next year. Here we have one of my almond trees. It was actually in that hole, but that first lemon tree I showed you earlier it wasn't growing. It actually got attacked by pack rats last year, and I didn't think it was going to survive. But put it in the bucket here, or in this 30-gallon pot, half of a 60-gallon barrel, and it seems to have kind of come back. It's a little struggling right now with the heat, but it'll be all right. Over here we've got a trellis with. This was originally a rosebud bush, or rosebud planter, raised bed here, but I have decided to place a trellis there and grow some spaghetti squash. And I also have a hummingbird feeder for Cedric. I named him Cedric, the hummingbird that visits us in the mornings and evenings. I've got a spaghetti squash, a single one. I don't have many pollinators in the area, so I'm having trouble getting some pollination and getting the male-female flowers actually. Here we've got a chiltepine plant, thanks to Uncle Timmy, my wife's uncle. And here we have a canary melon growing, doing pretty well. Past its prime now, but you can see that it has a sunflower up here. It got to almost 8 feet tall. Looks like the birds have gotten to it. Here's my fountain. I use this to attract the birds and also the dragonflies to keep the mosquitoes down, and also the flies and other things. A little bit of rosemary on this trellis here. I know it probably looks like a mess, but I've got Armenian cucumbers growing. Also have 3 rose bushes. And some butternut squash in there. It's really kind of hard to actually differentiate things. Also had some sunflowers at one time. Again, they're past their prime. And there are also watermelon plants in here, but with flowers, but no fruit just yet. Coming over here, got another Meyer lemon tree in a 30-gallon, the other half of that 60-gallon barrel. It struggled a little bit, but now actually you can see it's doing pretty well. No lemons, which it tried to have earlier in the year, but I guess it may have given up on that and just decided to put out some foliage instead and see if we could bounce back a little bit. Down here we have 2 more pepper plants. Struggling in the heat, but they are doing okay. They bounce back, usually in the evening time. I water about 5 times a day, about 5 minutes each time. And they'll plump back up here later this afternoon. Right now it's about 11 o'clock in the morning. Also have more bell pepper plants here, starting to produce for me finally. Got some purple, some red, some yellow, and some orange. So I'm looking forward to getting all of that later on this summer. Some indeterminate tomatoes. Romas and Tiny Tims. This one looks like it's not doing quite so hot. It may or may not survive, we'll see. And this one seems to bounce back pretty well. Nasturtiums, I think it's what they are. I planted this just to, well, as you can see, I have some pests. Honestly, I don't really care. I'm not eating these flowers, so if I want to attract the bugs, that's fine with me. This bed here was supposed to be beans, pole beans, and bush beans. I still have some. I got some beans out of it, but it's not really producing anything at the moment. I have ripped out the bean plants that produced, and then when kind of just stopped producing. And I've put some just green and Mexican squashes in there. This is going to be hard for me to do, but this entire thing here is a 12-foot bed. I've got a trellis, an 8-foot trellis, and it is growing predominantly Armenian cucumbers. I also have a pepper plant that overwintered, and oh my gosh, there is another. Oh, that thing is big. I'm gonna have to get that one tomorrow. Cucumber. Of course, the marigold's here to try to keep the pests down. I got some celery. It's been attacked by some caterpillars, it looks like, but we'll see if I can get it to come back. It's actually surprisingly doing well. There are some bean plants here. Another pepper plant, also attacked by caterpillars, looks like, but I think it'll be alright. I might not produce because it's too much in the shade. Forgot to show you this. This is my magnificent mandarin orange tree. Think cuties. This thing produces like crazy, and then around November, December, we're going to have all kinds of oranges on this tree. The hummingbirds really like it. They get to the fruit oftentimes before we do, but that's okay. I really don't eat too many oranges anyway. Here is my bear's lime tree. It produces well for me as well. I'm not sure if it's going to do quite so well this year. I did trim it back, and it got kind of a slow start with poor irrigation in the early part of the spring. But I love these things. These limes taste great. When you pick them off, you got to be careful because the juice is actually just coming out through the rind. It's so juicy. Here we have my greens bed. Kind of neglected it a little bit. Got some dinosaur kale, some Swiss chard, blue curly kale, and I tried to succession plant with some carrots, and it looks like these ones are doing all right. I know I planted the rest of the bed. I do have a roof line right above, so when it does rain, very infrequently that it does, it tends to have a not so good effect on the bed. And here, this is going to make absolutely no sense, but this is it was also a greens bed, but somehow I came up with a volunteer, what I thought was a pumpkin at first, but turned out to be, as you can see, a watermelon plant. And I've got 2 decent sized watermelons growing right now. I'm sure more will continue to grow. Get another one there. I've already got a few more flowers turning into small little watermelons, and that's pretty much going to do it for the tour. Hope it wasn't too long. I do have another hummingbird feeder that sometimes Cedric uses. And my neighbor is kind enough to share his grass clippings with me. As you can see, he's got a yard. And into these barrels goes the grass clippings. And then I add to it sawdust from another one of my wife's uncles. Does furniture. Works well out with mesquite and alder and other hardwoods. So I was fortunate enough to get some of the shavings, sawdust, and use that in my compost. And I gotta say, it's been pretty good. All right. Thanks for watching. Until next time.